Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, people of all ages, sexualities, and identities, and welcome back to another book review. Now, what is today's book review? Well, this is a book review on a book that was recently published by someone I know in the Doctor Who fandom, by Abby Louise. Now, Abby Louise, for someone out there who doesn't know, she is an incredible mother out there who essentially has control of a production named TT Productions. Now, she does a lot of voiceover work, and she's done a lot of scripts over the years. And The Green Door was originally, to my knowledge, was originally a script. But I decided to purchase recently her book because I was really intrigued, because I've never actually got round to listening to The Green Door. But let me just say, off the bat, this book is absolutely phenomenal. But without further ado, let's actually get into the story of this book. Now, first, before we can get into the story, we should actually get into the history of it. What is the Green Door? Well, the Green Door was essentially a door for lesbians and women back in the World War II to essentially gather and feel free and be able to express themselves. They used to play music, drink, and pretty much do a lot of things that at that time wouldn't have been accepted. So, now that you got a rough gist, here's the story of it. Well, we have two characters in this. We have a young girl named Avis, and we have a girl named Evelyn. Now, Evelyn is already a wife. Evelyn has kind of made her choice when she was very younger, or I shouldn't say made her choice, that's a horrible way to phrase it. She's had her choice made for her in a kind of way. And that's essentially what this whole book is about. This book is about how people's choice in the world can be taken away from them. And pretty much due to social pressures, society pressures, and just in general tradition. So, let's get into it. So, Evelyn is married. Avis is not. Avis is a young girl who is surviving the kind of horrors of the war. She's watching as bombs are dropping everywhere, and she is watching a city. And this city, of course, is none other than London. London is burning. London is on fire. London is in the height of the Blitz. Avis and Evelyn are kind of getting sick of it. They've watched the rubble, they've seen the world for what's happening, and both of them have decided it's time, and it's enough time. They need to escape. They need to get away. They need to see the world for what it is. They need to be able to live, not just in fear, but in joy and hope, even though the world is a dark place at that point in time. And hence they come across the Green Door, the two young women. Now, upon entering this place, both women are a little bit ashamed of their own names because they don't really want people in their local area knowing that they've gone through the Green Door. Even though it's a place that they imagine in their head to be free and beautiful, it's a place that has been put down to a lot of scrutiny, so you can kind of understand both of the women kind of trying to disguise their names. However, one of the women, Avis, decides to call herself Flower, whereas Evelyn decides to just kind of change her last name. In the story, Avis falls in love with a Navy officer slash Navy kind of secretary named Bernice. Now, her and Bernice kind of get in trouble for a really funny reason in this story. Even though this is a kind of bar where they can kind of be themselves and get all clingy with ladies and pretty much like dance with them without scrutiny, there is one particular rule in the Green Door, and that's no kissing on the dance floor. Now, of course, they move to one side after getting in trouble for this, but Bernice gets a little bit cocky and pretty much says to Avis, hey, if she weren't looking, I would have kissed you on the dance floor, which I just think is an absolute bit of cheeky chappy going on right there. However, back to the story. Well, essentially, that's their story, but Evelyn's story is a little bit different. Evelyn has turned up in the green door, and she finds herself madly in love with a woman named Lillian. Now, Lillian is a girl who works in a shop in her local area. Lillian kind of convinces Evelyn to go to the club, even though she shouldn't really be going there. But soon the two make a connection, and they find themselves in a little bit of a situation in which, from what I'm guessing, I mean, please correct me in the comments, Abby, but I'm guessing there's an implication in this that Lillian and Evelyn may have slept together at some point, because there's this kind of talk of them waking up the next day and then having to go back to the hall and explain to Desmond where they've been. But that's besides the point. Basically, there's two love kind of situations going on in this story. We have Avis and Bernice, and Evelyn and Lillian. Now, the absolute brilliant juxtaposition, I think, in this story as a round-off, as a whole, is the fact that we see it from two different points of view. We have Avis, who has just found herself in a bit of a situation in which she is about to be married off, and she absolutely hates her family for this. Whereas Evelyn's in a completely different predicament. Evelyn is stuck in this situation where she has a daughter and she has her husband, and she's kind of stuck in this hole where she's starting to think to herself, is this really my future? At one point in the book, Bernice and Avis basically run off to the hills and go up to Greenwich and just kind of make out. They get sort of caught, however, without their own noticing, when a Navy officer talks to Bernice and basically says to her, right, you've been caught in the park snogging this bird, you're going to be sent off to Scotland, so you're never going to see this bird again. And that breaks Bernice's heart, so she tries on the night of, well, I said the night, on the same day as the wedding, she tries to turn up just to try and see if Avis is still going through with her marriage. When she finds out that she believes that she's going through with her marriage, Bernice decides to go off to the train station. However, the lovely and beautiful thing at the end of this book is the fact that Bernice and Avis get on that train together and both head off to Scotland. There is absolutely no knowing what's going to happen next, but quite clearly there is something that is happening there, because they are prepared to make their own sacrifices if it does go south. They're going to be there for each other no matter what, as they go on the train and leave London to burn and just deal with what's happening. In the other story, however, going back to Evelyn, it turns out that Evelyn is in a situation in which one day she sits down with her husband after the event of the shop getting crushed, and her husband kind of knows about her and Lillian. He points out that he knew that they'd been going to the club for a while, but he had accepted that, and he didn't want her to feel like she couldn't be alive. He had seen it for a while, and eventually when they have this talk, he agrees to let Lillian stay in their place. However, under the agreement that they can have their relationship so long as out in public, it seems and appears to other people that he is Mr. and Mrs. with her. Evelyn agrees to these conditions and of course goes to Lillian to bring her home. So to basically round it all off, let's get to the crink of the cream, as it would be say, or the final verdict. Well, as I said from the beginning of this, I absolutely adore this book. Not only because it talks about a part of history that is very overshadowed and not necessarily shown in a lot of history films, but also because I love the way that the dynamic of the two stories are kind of separate and similar to one another. I mean, the fact that we've got a character such as Evelyn in this book who is already in a situation with a husband, and then we have Avis in this book trying to decide whether she wants to become like everyone else or she wants to finally make her own choice. And by the way that she just proves that to Bernice in the end of this book, I think is absolutely sensational. And for that reason, I give this book a solid 10 out of 10. Absolutely fantastic job, Abby. And I look forward to seeing more of your work in the future. For now, that has been this book review. Thank you everyone for watching, and we'll see you in the next book review. You absolutely gorgeous, beautiful individuals. Keep being fantastic.